Hey guys, I know it's been a bit since my last video, but I wanted to do a little something different while I tided you over for the next one. Recently, I got into The Venture Brothers. Not exactly the most famous show on Earth, but is a good god. Yeah, very much so. So today, I wanted to do something a little bit different. It's off the cuff, it's a little bit bizarre. I want to rank the characters. Now, this is just for my personal enjoyment on the one watch-through I've done of the series, and yes, I've seen it all. I've seen the Christmas special, the Halloween special, the movie, all that in Gargantua 2, all of it. I thought this would be a fun little experiment just because I wanted to do something a little different. This won't become the norm or anything like that, but I do have one or two more of these I think I might want to do one day. But, honestly, with all that being said, let's get into it. I'm ranking all of these characters based off of my own personal enjoyment. If I like the character a lot, they're obviously going to go higher up on the list. There aren't a lot of characters who are going down in D tier, but there are a couple, and we'll get to them when we get to them. With all that being said, kick back, relax, and enjoy. Let's talk about the Venture Brothers. Alright, who do we start with here? The obvious is obvious, so why don't we rip this band-aid off first? Brock Samson. Everybody loves Brock. He's just the best character, and rightfully goes in S tier. He goes through a lot of character development. He is the father that the Venture Boys never had. Haha, we'll get to him. And honestly, he's just really well-rounded for a character like him. He's not a monster the way that he claims himself to be. He's just Brock. And that's kind of why he's so lovable. I do miss the fact that he was gone in Season 4 doing his own thing, and I guess it was fine, but they really kind of dropped the ball on that idea in Season 5. I don't know, it feels Brock gets really shafted the later on the show goes, but at the same time, I understand why they did that. It's to show that the Venture Brothers are going through character development, becoming their own people, so they don't need Brock anymore. Even still, it sucks to see, especially considering he got shafted out of the movie too, a lot. We love you, Samson. You're number one in our hearts. Alright, next up, let's talk about the Action Man. Oh boy. Okay. So, the Action Man is a character, obviously is a David Bowie reference, as what isn't in this show. But something interesting about him is that there's an entirely separate side of him that we almost never see. Sure, there was the one time he beat Turnbuckle to death, but other than that, the Action Man kinda seems more like a decent, well-adjusted human being? But no, allegedly in Rusty's past, he was a complete monster. So that's gonna obviously take some points out of him. But the fact that he went through the arc that he did, small as it was, and he fell in love with, old Billy Quizboy's mom. That was sweet. I can't deny it. It was sweet. Gotta give credit where credit is due. The Action Man is a pretty solid character. He might be a dick, at least from what Rusty says, but how often can we trust his ass? Yeah, I think B is a good spot for him. Alrighty. Next up, yeah, I guess he's first on the list. Let's talk about Think Tank. I love his voice actor. I love the one joke that they do with him. Kind of uninteresting. He sets up that he's going to be a big bad to the Venture Brothers later on, and over the course of the season, you would think that he is, but no, it's one and done, basically. He ends up in Rusty's hospital room, and he doesn't do anything to him. Credit where credit is due. It's a decent idea, and like most villains in this show, he's not completely psychotic. I could dodge it. That's the only reason he's in C tier. And even then, that's a Brock joke, so... Alright, the, Doom Factory guys. I like the story that they went with more so than the characters themselves. Honestly, they just kind of seemed boring. A lot of the many splendored villains introduced in the last two seasons seem kind of eh. And it's weird, you would think they introduced this huge rogues gallery for the Venture Brothers and Rusty to deal with, and now they just get picked off like mice by, a certain somebody who I will get to. I don't despise the Doom Factory fucks as much as the next guy, but at the same time, I don't like them. They're boilerplate, boring, uninteresting. And, for a bunch of pretentious artists, that's not okay. But you know what is okay? Al. Yeah, I'm putting the Alchemist in S tier. He's fucking hilarious. The single episode that he really had a lead in was the one with Hank finding out about Dermot's mom, which is one of the best episodes of the show. Everybody Come to Hank's, I believe the name of it was. It's so good, and Al is just such a lovable character. He's not as teddy bear as a certain other member of the Order of the Triad, but you gotta love him. And Dana Snyder, as always, masterful performance. I only know him from this and Gaspacho from Chowder. I'd never really watched Aqua Teen. But man, he's just fun. Shame that they didn't use him in the movie, though. Baron Underbite. Yeah, C tier. I don't really have much to say about him. Of course, the episode where he tried to marry Dean, that's kind of weird. Not much more to be said about that. But they never really did anything with Baron Underbite, you know? Like, everybody always says, oh, he's a joke that just never landed. But was he? He wasn't really that funny. He wasn't that interesting. He just kind of existed. I don't know. Not a fan. On the opposite swing of that spectrum, let's talk about General Treaster, who is, yeah, B tier. Just Baron Underbite, but good and actually funny. He's also voiced by the same guy who played Cotton Hill in King of the Hill, which does give him points, and you also can't unnotice it. Treaster being a good guy is one of the greatest subterfuges that the show does, and knowing what the show does, that's pretty big sentiment. I think he's a lot of fun. I think what they do with him in the end is really, really cool, and just, I don't know. He's not very substantial, but he is interesting. I'll leave it at that. Rocco. Rocco sucks. I don't like Rocco. I don't think anybody likes Rocco. There's this weird will they, won't they kind of tension between Rocco and Serena, and it's weird because Serena's like 18 and Rocco's clearly in like his 30s. He's also just not very interesting, except for the last episode that focuses on the Wide Whale Gang. He could be worse. There are worse characters in this show, but he's the bottom of the barrel, man. Like, the only really good thing about him is his accent. Enough said. Kano, you son of a bitch. He's C tier. They gave him a substantial backstory in seasons 6 and 7, and that does raise him up decently, but he's still not the best. He's the big bodyguard. He's the Brock Samson of yesteryear, and that's fine, but they just don't really do that much with him as a character. Even in the backstory, he's more of a side piece. And yeah, you know, big presence, small presence. But I want to say I like him better than a lot of other characters in the show, but he just doesn't give me anything to work with. But I will give him above. He's not a bad character like these two are, but he's definitely not as good as these two. Speaking of bad characters, David Bowie. This guy. Oh boy. So, I like him, but I kinda hate him at the same time. It seems like the show never really knew what to do with him. On the one hand, he was an interesting character that brought a lot to the show, and he was arguably on the good guy's side in Season 2 when, well, we'll get to that. But all in all, the Sovereign's just, He really got shot in the head in Season 5, and I don't like it. He just kind of comes out of the blue and just says, oh yeah, big surprise, the big evil guy is actually evil. And like, yeah, that's fine, but you were kind of subverting that with most of the show prior to this point. And on top of that, he was being double-crossed underneath his own nose, so I don't know. It does do a lot of damage to him, and he is missed as a result. But what can you do? King Gorilla. I didn't get King Gorilla. The joke just right over my head. He's a bastard. He was in prison. He had cancer. And then his heart got stolen. There's not much more to mention other than he just did some absolutely horrid shit to Motley Crue, but uninteresting at best. Sorry. On the exact opposite hand, Helper! I love Helper. Unironically, I love Helper. He's funny, he's cute, he's caring, he's just the best. I can't really put him at A tier because they really did just kind of throw him away. But him being in the final scene of the entire show does prove that they cared at least a little bit about him, and that can't be understated. I'm sorry, Helper. You're wonderful with me. Venturstein! His first episode was interesting enough, and his second one was weird. He's arguably not the main character in either of them, as you could say that the initial one is more about Brock and the second one is more about Hank. But if you consider it in that logic, there is a nice little parallel that takes place around him. Brock being the one trying to destroy everything and creating Venturstein in the first place. Asterisk. And then you have Hank using his own Hank to get himself out of all sorts of jams. And as a result, he saves himself and Sergeant Hatred and Doc from Venturstein. I wish they could have done more with him, I guess, but at the same time, I don't really know what more you could do with a zombie with political radicalization. I don't know. I like him. I don't dislike him, but better characters. These guys. Double-crossing OSI agents, this just never landed for me. I think I might have missed a page somewhere. Like, they could, in theory, be interesting, but I feel like they didn't dedicate the right time to it, which is fine. I understand what they were going for in the context of it, but you would think it's more of a big deal, especially considering everything that goes down as a result. I'll put him in C tier just being the catalyst for change. Other than that, not too interesting. Professor Impossible goes in A tier just because he's voiced by Stephen Colbert. I'm not joking. I love Stephen Colbert as a voice actor. I wish he did it more. He's a character with a lot of... I don't want to say nuance, because it kind of goes out the window after his first episode. But you get the feeling that he's more oblivious than antagonistic, and that does stick through his entire character arc. But he's still an asshole. But he's also an asshole to Rusty, so... I don't know, you gotta throw how he treats Rusty Venture out the window for most of these character rankings, because, oh my god, if you don't. I don't know, I like Professor Impossible. I think he's a fun concept, and I think his face getting all stretched in 20 Years to Midnight is one of the better scenes I've seen with a Mr. Fantastic idea. Better than Doctor Strange did it, anyway. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum of characters that we're supposed to hate, Augustus St. Cloud. I don't like Augustus St. Cloud. I think he's annoying. I think he brings nothing to the series. And I wonder if that's intentional, because he and Rusty get along to a certain extent. A lot of people love the Season 5 episode Spanakopita solely because of how everything to do with Rusty is taking place in it. I think Augustus kind of ruins it. I get that they wanted to do something with St. Cloud, but at the same time, if you're throwing all of this backstory into Rusty's existence, why put him in the episode? Like, yeah, you got Pete and Billy coming along with Sergeant Hatred, but it's still not good. St. Cloud's my second least favorite character. The least one is everybody's. You know what I'm gonna pick, but he's just blah. He's an entitled brat that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, like, ever. He's Billy Quizboy's archenemy because, you know, he needed one. I don't hate Billy by any means, but it just feels like that was an unnecessary tack onto his existence, because he only appears like 3 times. Yeah, I don't know. Let's move on. White Whale. A Mafia Don in a situation like this is a decent enough idea, and I do find his last appearance specifically, or his last major one, to be genuinely good. But he's so boring. He's a non-entity most of the time. And all you really have from him is his daughter. And sure, there's a scene with the Monarch, but what I will say about Wide Whale for now is that he's a good idea, less than spectacular execution. On the complete opposite end of this, Brown Widow. I don't even give a damn about Firefly, and I like Nathan Fillion. Just, he gets in your brain, man. Honestly, I'm more of a fan of him in the scene where Rusty's trying to write his musical and he casts him as himself. But beyond that, not particularly fantastic. He shoots spiderwebs out of a giant anus. That is both ridiculously under the quality and exactly of the quality I would expect for this show, so I can't even pretend to be mad. Just weird. I like his voice actor. I think he's a decent enough character, and they do flesh him out various ways throughout the show. Still not that interesting, but I will put him in B tier because the few moments we get with him are pretty funny. Yeah, Colonel Gentleman. Yes. I'm gonna put Colonel Gentleman in B tier. So, when I was introduced to this show, it was through Netflix at a friend's place, and it only has the first 3 seasons. So, you see Colonel Gentleman in 20 Years to Midnight, and he's just dead. Now, yes, I know they reveal he's still alive in a Season 3 episode, but I didn't see it at the time. So I'm just like, oh, okay, you just kill him off? Alright, that's fine, I guess that makes sense. And then he comes back, and he's just kinda completely unlikable. That might have been the intention, I'll respect that, but the fact of the matter is, his joke really only works because of a Sean Connery impression, and he does have some absolutely gold lines. But there are better characters, and I'm saying that a lot, and you can see the rest of this list you see down here is not going to be easy for me to talk about. These are all mostly top-tier characters. Speaking of which, let's get what I would argue the lowest out of the way. Jeff. I feel bad putting him in B tier, but his coolest moment is in the movie, and the movie was less than spectacular. He's a fun character, he has good dialogue, I love him, but I just wish he did more. He did slice the tax guy in half, which is good. I don't know, it's really funny, and Al's reaction to it is just, great. I love these 3 as a trio, I love them all individually, I just wish I could give Jeff more praise. He just deserves it so much. He's such a fun design, a cool idea. But alas, not much to him. This lady. Why did she exist? I guess I can put her and her husband in the same category because they're just kind of non-entities. I don't want to put them in D tier. I'll put him in D tier. Her, on the other hand, she's got a fun voice. She does become friends with Dr. Mrs. the Monarch while she's searching out for our dear friend the Blue Morpho. But other than that, she's cool. You can look at her. She's cool. We'll give it that. Let's move on. Let's go with the pirate captain next. He's hilarious. He's hilarious. I absolutely love the pirate captain. I think he's a ton of fun to watch as a character. His tranquilizer addiction is... It's not funny, but it's so funny. He almost never misses when it comes to the dialogue department, and sure, he does get that kind of stupid twist when they're opening the Jonas Venture Museum, but other than that, he just kind of hits it out of the park every single time, and then basically turning him into Tim Cook. They did good with this guy. I liked him from the start, I liked him in the end. The pirate captain, gold star for me. This guy's only going in C tier because he's voiced by the guy who plays Captain Huggy Face in Word Girl. I'm not even kidding, it's the same actor. I don't know what to say about this guy. He survived. He's a fighter. I can respect him for that. But then he just kind of escapes through a septic tank and they never appear again. I don't know. He's the arch of Professor Impossible, or at least he was at one point. Not a character I would really go back to. Although I do like his character design. The way he looks like that one virus is just... Myra. Myra should probably be in the D tier, to be honest. But at the same time, she is so important to showing off how much Brock loves the Ventures that I can't put her any lower. And yeah, okay, both of her episodes were bangers, so that also helps, but she doesn't really make them good. I don't know, it's weird. She's not the best, and the fact that everybody thought she was their mother for such a long time, it just... She did lay the hurt on the Monarch at one point. I'll give her credit for that. That was funny, but... Alright, we have run out of characters on this slide here that are easy to explain, so, Dr. Killinger. Sure, I'll go with you. I love his character. I love that he's just the complete dichotomy of what you would expect from his design. He's genuinely, seemingly a wonderfully nice person, and he seems to help people no matter where he goes. Sure, maybe he's just letting them get in touch with their more evil side in pretty much every scenario, but he's not making them evil. He's just boosting whatever's inside the person's soul. And honestly, in Rusty's case, I think it was to warn him about what he was going to become, and I love that. And of course, who can forget? Sweet love. Monstroso. Okay, I got a hot take. I don't like Operation Prom. I don't think it would have worked as a series finale. It just feels weird. The ending is gold, I'll give you that, but the first, 40 minutes... I don't know. I don't get Monstroso. I get that he's supposed to represent a deal with the devil, but at the same time, he's not the devil, and other people seem to be, out for him, and they never explain that. I don't know. I want to put him in D tier, but he does have some good dialogue with Billy Quizboy, so I gotta put him in C. Oh dear lord, I did not intend it. I did not intend for this to look like that. He's not the worst character. He's just kind of boring. Yeah, big guy. He's implied to have superpowers, and I don't think we ever see that he does. Alright, Red Mantle and Dragoon. This is a concept that I feel like just should not have worked. Because going into the show, I found out about the two-headed guy, and I saw that one clip. You know the one about the about the magical gathering? I'm not gonna say out loud, but you know what I'm talking about. And then they turned out to be freaking awesome? I don't know how to put it. They're funny, they're Statler and Waldorf, and you just gotta love them. And the craziest thing is, on the High Council, however evil they're supposed to be, they're just kind of exasperated dickheads, and that's kind of what makes them amazing. You know what? Yeah, I'll put him in A. Very little shame. I'll put him in A. Alright, this is easy. Brick Frog, I don't get the joke. Yeah, I get that the divot of a brick is called a frog, but, in universe, I don't get the joke. Everybody loves Brick Frog. Everybody says that Brick Frog is the funniest thing in the world. I don't get it. It just... right over my head. Like a frog, you might say. I don't think he's a bad character. I just think he's uninteresting. I don't even think he does anything. I think he's just a frog. A guy who dresses up in a frog and hurls bricks at people's windows. If that's the entire joke, I'm sorry, but, But, on the exact opposite counterpoint, characters I find uninteresting and actively hate the Moppets. These little turds make my skin crawl. They make everybody's skin crawl. And to a certain extent, you would think, okay, well, that's the intention. Maybe you should give them credit for being that. Yes. No. Every single possible scene the Muppets could be in, they're always awful. And there's no redeeming qualities about either of them, except they're, like, funny twice. They give the Monarch one of his best moments when he just outright acts audience surrogate and just throws him away, just threatens him. And, of course, there's a scene where they pretend to be children, but no. And Hench has killed Hench. That entire thing just gone. And sure, they don't deserve much more than that, but it's still unceremonious for characters that I think literally everybody hated. Alright, the investors. These are characters. They're more like plot devices. I'll throw them in C tier. I don't get them. Like, I understand they're supposed to be this big, shadowy organization taking things down and killing people, but Killinger just eradicates all three of them, and you never really find out what their goal was. Do they work for a higher power? Do they work for themselves? I haven't read the book, I don't know. But just uninteresting, man. Like, sure, they kill Monstroso, but other than that, pass. Alright. 24. I like 24. I don't love 24. I like 24. That Ray Romano voice just... I like Ray Romano as an actor a lot, so hearing that stupid impression, it really does just make my heart go bump, bump, bump. He was at his best when he was dead, and I don't mean that as an insult. Him being the way he is to 21 after his death is something that genuinely made the show better, and it made 21 better. But I do kind of wish they did more with him, although him fading away was one of the 2 times that the show almost made me cry. Alright, let's talk about Molotov. Most of her episodes, I think, are pretty good. I don't like, Assassin Annie 911, like, at all. I think it's kind of pervy, and I know that was the point, but, like, still. I don't understand what she does after season 3. Like, just no idea. I know she's an assassin, but did she just plan on the ending of Operation Prom out of her own, like, volition? Was her whole intention to just kill the Venture family? Does she really have that much of a narc on for Brock? It makes my head spin. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. But Molotov is badass, and she does have some good moments here and there. She's not Brock. She is, as Pulp once famously said, the last drink he never should have drunk. Henchman 0. Or just 0. Not bad. Again, just not particularly interesting to me. Gargantua 2 did give him a lot of good, but the one episode that this specific image is from just baffles me. The point was what, exactly? I'll be honest, I was more concerned about shore leave than anything else in this episode, so I don't know. He's not awful, and his fear of self-awareness is a lot of fun. You know what? I'm gonna put him on B. Just that first episode was so good and so funny, and it only works because his character is the way that it is. Alright, Shore Leave's partner, whose name escapes me. Not much of a character. He leans into Shore Leave's nonsense, so I'll put him into C tier, but he just kinda exists, and then he just doesn't. Could have fleshed him out, could have done literally anything with it, but nah. Besides, Shore Leave's got enough personality for 2. Let's talk Dermot. Dermot is a character that gets better with each appearance. I think that he works solely because he's so much of a dipshit. The crazy thing is, he puts up this whole tough guy persona all of the time, but then you look back and realize, oh my god, he's not a bad kid. And honestly, there is way too much good in him, and he kinda mellows out after Dean kicks his ass. Which is a character trait that I've grown to love Dermot as the series went on, and I think the show really would be something different without him. And I'll get to why when we get to him. Radical Left. No real opinion. I think his joke is funnier and, like, on paper than it was in execution. Although the fact that he is his own arch enemy, that does kick him. That's what gets him into C tier. I do think that was pretty funny. This guy. Okay, alright, so. I'm putting him in D tier. Solely because he doesn't do anything. Like, yeah, sure, he can teleport people around, and that's an interesting enough technique. But one post-credits scene does not a good character make, especially because he's not even in it. The asshole dimension Rusty would have been infinitely more interesting to see. I get why he was here, and they did use him relatively well, but I think I'd rather see any of these characters other than him. Not Synclab. I would not want to see Synclab. Hunter. Oh, god damn it. Hunter is a love him or hate him sort of character. He got substantially less likable as the show went on, especially after what happens in Season 7 with Rusty, but I do think at his core, he is a likable character, and I think his hyper energy is very welcome for this show, especially counterpointing it with both Brock and Shore Leave. They're this weird little family that kind of needs each other to survive in a sort of parasitic kind of way, and I wouldn't have it in any other form. Also, the deep cover operation he went on, that was just... I still think about that sometimes, and the flashback that goes along with it, or vision, whatever you want to call it. One of the greatest jokes in the entire show. Okay, alright. Every single one of these characters is gonna be a mess to explain, and I'm already 40 minutes in. Let's finish off the characters that aren't really worth much. This guy. I'm gonna put him in D, not because I don't like him, but because I do like the Monarch, and I hate how much he hates him. Is that petty? Yes. But it's so fucking funny. Dedicates his entire life to trying to ruin monarchs just because he has the hots for his wife. It's a living. Alright, okay. Out of the 19 remaining characters, who is the least interesting? Okay, sorry, Dr. Z. Dr. Z's going in B tier because he does certainly seem to be a better person than who he was in the past, which is something that very few characters in the show actually are. But they don't do enough with him as a character, so he's just kind of going in B tier. Also, I just noticed the Blue Morpho and Action Johnny are not on this list. I'll put Blue Morpho, like, probably A tier, honestly. And then Action Johnny, he can sit middle of C, just for the record. Let's move on to the daughter. Triana Orpheus. This poor kid, man. I'm also going to put her in B because she suffered a lot and she's a likable character. And Dean just absolutely destroyed that. I feel so bad for Triana. She goes through so much hell, and she just the only rational thinking human being in the first 3 seasons, just period. Maybe Brock, but like, yeah, no, usually just Triana. And it's not that she should be with Dean, but she should have stayed in the show. And I get why she isn't, but she was infinitely more likable than Ted Mosby's wife. Yeah, Krista Milioti. Same lady. The penguin lady. Yeah. Serena, what the hell, man? And the commentary in the movie, Doc and Jackson explicitly said that they didn't want to make Serena out to be a bitch. I gotta be honest, I think Hank was too good for her. She's just, I don't want to call her miserable, but uninteresting really does kind of seem to sum it up. I don't hate Serena, and I think the fact that she does have this softer side with Hank does earn her some points. But at the same time, she cheated on him, man. With his brother. Like, that wasn't an out-of-nowhere thing. They got kind of buddy-buddy early on in Season 7. It hurts. Just a crying shame, man. They could have done something with that, and maybe if they didn't get canceled, they would have. But at the same time, what do you want me to say? We'll get to him. He's a conversation for another moment. But for now, no, can I surely put him in S tier? There's something so infectiously likable about Shore Leave, and I think it's because they gave him this weird, like, puppy dog energy. It's like, you want to be around him. You want to spend time with this guy. You want to know, like, who he is as a person. And sure, the OSI indoctrination doesn't exactly help him, but the fact that he is such a good dude at the root of everything does kind of make things better. And yeah, he serves as a fantastic foil to Brock in a way that Rusty simply can't, so I'll give him that too. Gotta love you, Shore Leave. 10 out of 10. Watching Worder in A tier. It shouldn't be this difficult for me to explain why, but something around halfway through the show just kind of flicked in my brain, and then these two just became hilarious. They have one of the funniest lines in the movie. And it's just, you just want to love them because they're so funny. I wish I was exaggerating. I'm really not. Thinking about some of the stuff. The piss cup immediately comes to mind back in like seasons 1 or 2. But the world needed more Watchin' Ward, and I'm so glad that the show delivered whenever they could. Godspeed, you two. Godspeed. Let's talk about Billy first. Billy Quizboy deserves a lot of love. He's kind, he's compassionate, he's hardworking, and he's smart. He is, in pretty much every way, the exact antithesis of Rusty, and yet he still puts him up on a pedestal. I think that Billy deserves all the love, not just because of his dedication, but because in a world of chaos, he's a decent human being. Even St. Cloud doesn't break him. He makes a few mistakes, sure, every character in this show does, but at the same time, you can't help but love him. He was whisked into this world against his will. He retaliates when he rediscovers that after it's been wiped from his memory, and, you know, the nozzle. I love Billy Quizboy. He deserves more love, and them introducing his mom into the show only made it better. Godspeed, buddy. Pete White. The show seems to think that Pete is this gold-digging, like, man-ho. But, like, I never got that vibe from him. Like, sure, he is a little bit shallow, but not really much more than the rest of the characters in this show. And at the same time, He did genuinely try his best to help Billy. He's not a heartless bastard. He does stupid things, but everybody does. That's the entire point of this show. The theme is failure. I do want to say that he deserves a little bit more love, solely because I don't think he's as bad as everybody thinks he is. Matter of fact, I'm going to put him right next to 24 here. I'm not making a definitive list of this, just bear in mind that a certain character is going to be at the top of S tier and the Muppets are at the bottom of D. Okay. Alright. That is every character that's easy to talk about. When we come back, we'll get to it. And we're back. Now, you might have noticed I add an unranked rank here. That is definitely subject to change, but that's because none of these characters are going anywhere near the D tier. Okay, well, anywhere near is a relative term. That being said, this is the order we're going to tackle them in. Let's start with Red Death. Red Death is awesome. Now, listen, Clancy Brown can make anything phenomenal, but the fact of the matter is, he's just so fun and so likable that you can't help but love the guy. I love him, I love his family, I love the love that he has for his family, and I love the fact that even as one of the most powerful evil villains in the entire show, he's not a bad guy. Well, relatively. I love Red Death, I just wish they did anything more with him. And the movie showing just how good of a person he really is, that was amazing. Just wish there could have been more, man. Phantom Limb. B tier. I feel like they were trying to do something with Phantom Limb that just never played out. Like, yeah, there's all this in Gargantua too, but the lead up to that kind of made it seem like he was going to be the big bad for the rest of the show, and then that role just kind of went to Wide Whale instead. I don't know, man. It's weird. You gotta wonder how things shook out. I don't dislike Phantom Limb, although I will say that in his flashback in The Invisible Hand of Fate, I thought he was Dr. Orpheus. Yeah, the first time I thought it was Dr. O. They sounded so similar to me, I couldn't not parse it. It was weird. But I mean, yeah, him becoming the bad guy, like Big Bad of Season 2, they did build up to that and they executed it pretty well. I did like it. I don't know why they went with that crazy thing for him. It just really didn't seem to go anywhere. And then, if his detached limbs were controlling the inanimate objects, why was he not able to just put his limbs back on? And for that matter, at the end of Showdown at Cremation Creek, Al takes Phantom Limb's a thing, and I don't think that's ever addressed, so okay. Get on up here, man. You deserve it more than anybody. Dr. Byron Orpheus is just wonderful. He's a kind, concerned soul who truly does love the Venture Boys, even Rusty to a certain extent, and I'll get to that when I get to him. But everything he does, he just seems to do with kindness and level-headedness. He's an empath more than anything, and he gives everybody a second chance, even if they don't deserve it. It's kind of sad to see how much his heart bleeds, especially considering his wife and daughter left him, and he doesn't begrudge them for it, at least not that much. He's even friends with the guy who his wife left him for. Yeah, he's a bit of a pushover, but at the same time, he's just so good. And in a world full of just absolute nutcases and sociopaths, we need more people like Dr. O and, of course, Al. Good character, one of my favorites, one of everybody's favorites. God bless you, Byron. Thank you. Sergeant Hatred. My man, what did they do to you? Now, yes, there is the obvious problem with him, but I'm talking more than that. As the show went on, they didn't seem to know what to do with Sergeant Hatred. Once they made it to New York City, they brought Brock back, so even then, Sergeant Hatred ended up being the desk jockey, which is just sad. He's in the show up until the very end, but he never really does anything after he gets demoted. It's sad. And sure, he doesn't really do too much as Brock's replacement, but I do genuinely think that he tried to do better despite everything that was going against him, and I do have to respect him for at least being pretty damn likable to a suspicious degree, like to an almost Dr. O degree. I love Sergeant Hatred, but by the time he was running out of steam, I really just didn't want anything to do with him anymore. It's sad to say, but it just... Sorry, man. Your spark faded. Speaking of... Let's talk about Jonas. Rusty's father, Jonas Venture Sr., was evil. Debatably, the most evil person in the entire franchise. And remember, this is a world where these two exist. I don't know what to say about Jonas that hasn't already been said, but the implication that Rusty was a clone kind of recontextualizes everything about him, and that the death of young Rusty just destroyed him. But at the same time, we see Jonas before Rusty, and he was still a bit of a prick. And then just the reveal in Season 7 that, spoiler alert, hoot hoot, put it on mute, he's still alive is kinda mind-blowing. They don't do anything with it, and yeah, he's a disembodied head, but this is the Venture Brothers we're talking about. Look at Red Mantle and Dragoon, they're literally two heads stitched onto one body. You could have done something with this. But, considering who does the finishing blow, I guess that's fair. And, to be honest, I do like what they do with Jonas. Although, I will say he doesn't really make any sense. And I'm not just talking about the thing, I'm talking about the flashback in the 3rd episode, Careers in Science, up in Gargantua 1, where he's just, a disembodied spirit, and Rusty's hand gets covered in blood when he tries to touch him. Now you might think, oh, well, he hit his head, he's probably bleeding from the back. No, it just happens. This has nothing to do with Jonas, it's just something that's bothered me since first watching the episode. JJ. Oh, JJ. He did good. He wanted to do good. He wanted to be everything that Rusty wasn't able to. Be the man that Jonas Venture was, at least from his perspective. And I gotta be honest, I think he succeeded. For most of it. He managed to pull Venture Industries out of the crapper and make it into an actual multi-billion-dollar company again. He built Gargantua 2, which, as disastrous as that ended up being, was a true amazing feat. He motivated Rusty to be better, and, as redundant as this is going to sound, he motivated Rusty to be better. I mean that in two different ways. The first one is simply, hiring him on to do work for him, and sure, that ended up going kind of disastrously, but at the same time, you kind of see where he's coming from, and that I don't think anybody in this show loves Rusty more than JJ. Which is weird, considering he tried to kill him first and foremost. But slowly but surely, there was a bond that formed there. And right at the very end, you find out that it wasn't one-sided. Alright, I'm going a little bit out of order here. Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, you're going in B tier. Do I put you above Sergeant Hatred? I don't think I do. And here's why. So, Dr. Girlfriend, Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, Sheila, whatever you want to call her, she's cool. I respect her a lot, and I think that they did a lot of interesting stuff with her, but at the same time, I don't know how to put this. It feels like they put her on the back burner by putting her in the hot seat. Something about her just being the head of the Guild of Calamitous Intent, whether intentionally or not, is just... It feels too highbrow for, honestly, the entire Venture clan as a whole. And as much as I dislike this decision, the thing that kinda shoots everything in the foot for me is the fact that she just kinda is. I just feel like there's more to her, and that there's this fun, jokey side that, she and her husband both share that she doesn't expose as much as she should. I don't know. I love you, Dr. Mrs. the Monarch. I didn't know how to put that into an acronym, but B tier. On the other hand, Gary. Putting 21 up in S. This poor bastard. So, he started the show arguing about Smurf reproduction, and he finished it as the guy who said the last line of dialogue before the credits in the Venture Brothers final scene. I like 21 because he sticks to who he is as a character throughout all of his trials and tribulations. He grows, of course, and he becomes ridiculously close with the Monarch, but at the same time, he's still him. There's a part of him that just doesn't change. There's a moral code that he lives up to that he doesn't compromise on. And on top of that, he cares. Deeply. Whether it be about 24 before his head got tragically blown off, or when it comes to the Monarch afterwards when he gets his house blown up. Oh yeah, that was fun. This poor guy should not be anywhere near a Venture security guard with explosives. It just never ends well. I love 21. I think he's a lot of fun. From the get-go, pretty much, he was one of my favorite characters. And he deserves a lot of love. Shout out to the man. Hench for life. Dean. You hurt me, man. I'm putting Dean in C tier. I know what you're thinking, but it's not just her. There's a lot more to why Dean pisses me off. This guy was the Venture brother for the first 3 seasons. It was all about Dean. He was the one that everyone, or at least I seem to know, is that everybody seemed to take seriously. There was Dean and his brother Hank. That was the entire gist of the show. Sure, he kind of got shafted in the Cremation Creek 2-parter, but other than that, yeah, 9 times out of 10, it was all about Dean. And he was likable, he was funny, he was awkward, he was a good character. And then season 4 happened and he just kind of went down the toilet. I can't explain this. Maybe it had something to do with Brock leaving, the way it affected both of them, but all of a sudden, Dean just became kinda completely unlikable, and he never got any better. I know that sounds a bit reductive, but the point that I'm trying to make here is the fact that he should have been better than he is. He should have gone through more character growth. Instead, he got dumped. Became the god of mutants created by his dad, and then nailed a mutant chick that just didn't go anywhere, even though it seemed like that was going to become a plot point later on, but whatever. Dean could have been interesting, but he just went so far down the crapper. And I'll be honest, the only reason he's not down here with St. Cloud and the Moppets is because of the Saphrax Protocol. The scene of Dean just breaking himself, crying and begging for Hank to forgive him while Hank is comatose, it hits you. That, I have a soft spot for when shows acknowledge that characters have regressed and they try to, fix it. And that scene, and especially his entire arc of the movie and tracking down Hank no matter what, it was a step in the right direction, but it was still too little too late. Sorry, Dino. You're in the tubes. Enrico Matassa goes in S tier. Hank. Oh my god, what a glow up. From the very beginning of Season 4, and I'd argue back towards the end of Season 3, Hank started growing, and he just never stopped. He was the one that got the girl, he was the one that decided to become a hero, he was the one being himself, he got Sphinx to respect him. Everybody always says Hank comes out on top because he always stayed himself, and to a certain extent, I guess I agree with that, but there's something inherently good about Hank. And this is crazy, but he's almost like a combination of the raw recklessness of Brock and the kind sentimentality of Dr. O. He's so good, man. I love what they did with Hank, because let me explain this real quick. I hated Hank Venture until the end of Season 2. Like, I thought he was insufferable, I thought he was unlikable, I thought he was awful in every sense of the word. And then Showdown at Cremation Creek happened. He decided to take the lead and become everybody's favorite Russian Guyovich. And from there, he just kept getting better and better. I honestly think the show would not have landed as well if Hank hadn't improved. Now, did Dean need to suffer as a result? Maybe. But the fact that not only did he not hold what happened between Dean and Serena over Dean's head, but the fact that while his psyche did take advantage of the situation, he himself was the one that saved Dino from disaster. Hank Venture is a good kid. He's a bit lacking when it comes to the general scientific intelligence that his brother and dad seem to share, but he's a good kid. And honestly, I think he's actually his dad's favorite. I know they make the joke about it, but I genuinely think that it's true. Sure, he nurtures Dean to be like himself, but he respects Hank for not wanting to do that. And of course, the channeling dead crazy people is just one of the funniest lines in all of television. Do you think it's a cry for help? Malcolm Fitzcarraldo. So, alright, I got a bit of a hot take here. I'm not putting him in S tier. And here's why. After a certain point, the Monarch kind of became the main character. And yes, there is the obvious The Venture Brothers thing that's going on. But I mean that in a good way, but also because he got so much spotlight, he also kind of suffered for it. I know it's weird, they didn't do anything wrong with him. As a matter of fact, I think making him the main for the last 2 seasons was probably the best that they did for him. And the Blue Morpho story is just one of the best the show has to offer. And he killed Jonas Venture. That's always something he's going to have under his hat. Gotta respect it. But at the same time, there's something about the Monarch that just feels unearned. You know? Like, there's one more thing that we need from him that we just never got. And honestly, this reminds me of a piece of art I actually saw while I was making this video. The dichotomy between him and Rusty. Yeah, Rusty's going in S tier. Not only that, the top S tier. The final line of the series recontextualizes his entire character. Well, the final scene, but the final line specifically. Rusty is a victim, and he uses that to his advantage a lot, but at the same time, he doesn't let it completely destroy himself. He's aware of how much he's suffering and he doesn't want to. And more importantly, he knows how much he has suffered and he doesn't want Hank and Dean to. And that's the craziest part. Throughout the entire show, you have Rusty viewing the kids as nothing but a burden, nothing but a pain, barely a blip on his radar. And then you get that last scene, and yeah. One detail about Rusty that they never, ever changed on was that he wanted to be a father. This is something going so far back as to with Dermot. Because remember, he didn't just want to leave. He knew he took responsibility. He was willing to raise the kid. I'm not going to say Rusty's a good man, because objectively he's not. But bizarrely, he is, in a lot of ways, the opposite of his clone, the Monarch. Because not only could Rusty obviously not do what the Monarch could, but the Monarch can't do what Rusty can. Monarch can't be a dad. There's a very bizarre detail about Rusty Venture throughout the entire show that I genuinely don't understand. This stupid asshole is the most beloved character in the entire universe. Very few people actually hate him, and to a certain extent, I don't even think the Monarch does. Honestly, the only one I would say genuinely despises Rusty Venture is the Doctor. Sorry. But Dr. O didn't know Rusty when he was a kid. He didn't have the hero worship, and he still loves him anyway. Pete and Billy both get shit on him time and time again, but they still stand up for Rusty. They back him up. They help him out however they can. And this is something explicitly after JJ's death, or I guess right before. Rusty stops taking it as much for granted. Something about JJ broke Rusty. And yeah, sure, the funeral wouldn't have you going about that, considering he was just pissy the whole time, and then he snapped when he found out he was rich now. But he buys out Pete and Billy's company, and immediately puts them to work to try to make things that'll actually, A, not destroy the company, and B, live up to his dad's reputation. And sure, that's something that's been hankling him down through the entire show, but he doesn't go out of his way to bog others down with it the same way that Jonas did to him. He wants Hank to be himself because he knows that's the safest thing for him. He nurtures Dean into being a super scientist because he knows that's the safest thing for him. He teaches Dermot how to be a respectable human being because he knows it's the right thing for him. And sure, we could dissect it all the livelong day, but Rusty cares, man. The borderline constant from moment one is that he's an apathetic, self-righteous douchebag. And then, at the very last second, it all makes sense. He's hurt, he's broken, but he's not incapable of love. And slowly throughout season 6 and 7, he grows as a character into one that's both a little bit more respectable, but also a genuinely loving father. There's 2 separate occasions where he outright has an intimate moment with Dean where he does genuinely love him. And then there's the one scene with Hank where it's, of course, played up to be some sort of weird disguise because, you know, he's listening to music and he's zonked up. He loves his sons. He always did. He always will. The clones' deaths weigh on him something heavily, and he had the clones in the first place because he didn't want to lose them. God damn it, Rusty. It's very rare that a single scene can redefine an entire character, especially one that's only 30 seconds long. It's even rarer that a single line of dialogue can, especially when nothing comes afterwards. Or, I guess, everything comes afterwards. Rusty gets the top of S tier because of how much he changed, which is weird considering he didn't really change much. But the fact that the way we perceive him changed so drastically, the fact that we know deep down, yeah, he's an asshole, but there's more gold in his heart than you might think. And sure, he's done absolutely travesty-worthy things. Building a happiness pod out of a dead orphan, that's one of his better moments. But genuinely, Rusty you need to give him a break, man. He needs to give himself one. He's not perfect. He never will be. But neither is anybody. And it's interesting to see that in a show that's so based on failure, that they'd let its biggest failure of a character grow so much in its final breaths, whether they knew it or not at the time. That's a story with a lot of these guys. They really just kept getting better and better as time went on, and even the few of them that aren't around anymore, looking at you, JJ, you see these characters grow. They're not the same people they were from minute one, and that's one of the greatest parts about shows like The Venture Brothers, getting to witness characters develop. And sure, I didn't wait 20 years to watch it happen like most of the people who truly love this show, but on this initial watch, I fell in love with this universe. I love these characters. I love what they do and who they are. I want to watch more of them. And sure, we're probably never going to get that, but we'll always have the memories. And now we don't have to wait half a decade for that to happen. But this is just one little asshole talking about his own experiences. I won't claim to speak for everybody. I won't even claim to speak on knowing what the hell I'm talking about, because then people would try to get in touch with me. I appreciate everything, and I promise more regular videos are on the way. But I'll leave it at that. Go Team Venture.